comments about a quid pro quo with Ukraine. Former Ohio Governor John Kasich says he believes the president should be impeached.
If you're asking me if I was sitting in the House of Representatives today and you were to ask me how do I feel, do I think impeachment should move forward and should go for a full examination and a trial in the United States Senate, my vote would be yes.
Whatever might have been gray and unclear before is certainly quite clear right now. We're not supposed to use government power and prestige for political gain.
Florida Representative Francis Rooney went on to say that he would not rule out voting to impeach the president. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell reportedly now believes an impeachment trial is, quote, inevitable.
Now, Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, he's hunkering down with GOP lawmakers. They're at Camp David this weekend. Of course, this will come up. We're covering this from all angles today. CNN's Marshall Cohen is in Washington. Kristen Holmes is at the White House.
And that is where we will begin. Kristen, I mean, we were just mentioning the president was hit on a number of fronts this week. I'd imagine he's feeling quite some pressure, especially from his own party.
That's right, Amber. It'd be hard-pressed for him not to feel this way, and here's why. For the last couple of years, we have seen these Republicans, this base, really rally around President Trump. And now, not only are they saying that they have some issues with the president, but they're saying it on national television in front of a camera and on the record. We've heard mumblings of this in the past when there were certain negotiations they didn't like, but this was all in closed-door talks. Now they're really coming out and saying it, and the concern is really in three different factions here. One being the announcement of that G7 summit, that's international leaders coming down to Trump's resort in Doral. This is his golf resort. They say they're going to host it there in 2020. A lot of concern there, raising a lot of antennas about the transparency. Is the president going to be making money off of these foreign leaders? Another thing that they're concerned about is Mick Mulvaney. As you mentioned, he is at Camp David, or he's heading there today with GOP lawmakers, and his comments about a quid pro quo will likely come up. And I just want to quickly remind our viewers what happened this week when he got out there in front of the camera on the podium and he said, well, in fact, we did want Ukraine to look into Democrats, and that was part of withholding the aid from that country, millions of dollars in aid. And when one reporter said to him, hey, you're describing a quid pro quo, he responded and said, that happens in foreign policy, get over it. And the last thing, of course, being the withdrawal of U.S. troops in Syria. We saw a lot of Republicans incredibly angry. Staunch supporter of Trump, Senator Lindsey Graham, was really attacking this policy all week long. And yesterday, the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, wrote an op-ed. But I do want to note one thing about that op-ed. While he did excoriate the idea of taking out U.S. troops from Syria, he never once mentioned the president's name. So clearly going up to the line there, but not quite crossing it, not quite directly attacking Trump. But as you said, Francis Rooney, that Republican from Florida, he did go up to that line. Take a listen.
You're saying at this point you are not ruling out the possibility that this is an impeachable offense for the president.
I don't think you could rule anything out till you know all the facts.
So that's pretty incredible there. Clearly saying that he wasn't ruling out impeachment. That's the first time that we've heard this from a GOP congressman. So it's going to be an interesting week. We're taking more testimony on Capitol Hill.
Kristen Holmes for us at the White House. Kristen, thank you. Now to new reporting on President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Now, we've learned that he tried to use his clout with the White House to get Viktor Shokin, a former Ukrainian official, a visa to enter the U.S.
Let's go to CNN's Marshall Cohen in Washington with more. Marshall, so tell us more about his efforts to get a visa for Shokin. First off, why was he trying to do that?
Good morning, guys. Sources tell CNN that in testimony this week, a senior official from the State Department told lawmakers that Rudy Giuliani did press the State Department for a visa for this former Ukrainian prosecutor. The man is Viktor Shokin. He was forced out of his job several years ago during the Obama administration. He claims because of Joe Biden. And so he was going to bring those allegations to Giuliani. Giuliani wanted him to come into the U.S. so they could sit down and talk. The State Department did not grant that visa, so Giuliani took his case to the White House, where he's obviously very close with President Trump. Despite that appeal, though, the State Department never granted a visa to Mr. Shokin. He did not come to the United States.
Now, he couldn't visit the U.S., but tell us about the effort that Giuliani made then to actually get the information from Shokin.
Sure. They were not, without the visa, it wasn't the end of the story. And Giuliani got on a Skype call with Victor Shokin where they talked about Joe Biden and the investigation into a company that Joe Biden's son was on the board for. And Giuliani took those allegations from Shokin of misconduct and corruption by Joe Biden and put those allegations on the airwaves in op-eds. Of course, should be clear, there's no allegations of there's no proof of wrongdoing by the Bidens.
Do whatever. So the point isn't so much of if Giuliani was conducting what usually is State Department business outside of the usual lines, NSC, State Department. Let's keep an eye on what he does, not on whether or not he was employed as a personal attorney or not, because people may think that the president does have some leeway there. But the point here is, what does he do? You talked about how he was trying to use his influence to get someone in the United States to help advance a political aim. That clearly is something that's questionable. There are stories out there about a potential New York-based federal investigation of Giuliani and what he was doing with foreign contacts, whether or not he was trying to use political influence with foreign governments. Those are the things to look for here. And let's keep. And I think what is remarkable is that finally you have people from within the State Department and that intelligence and government community who are willing to come up to Capitol Hill and testify to what was going on. What's important in all these things as this impeachment unfolds is exactly what happened, and we're finding out more. And Giuliani's role now is so important because he seemed to go beyond the role of personal attorney and as a political emissary. That's what his real role is here.
Exactly. Speaking of Mick Mulvaney, Democrats and Republicans, I mean, they're still reeling from this stunning admission the other day about a quid pro quo with the Ukrainians. And of course, he quickly denied that in a statement. But how much would you say Mick Mulvaney is adding to President Trump's impeachment troubles?
If you were just a person who doesn't just hang on every minute of this, and they watched what he said, whatever, you may have the impression that he was good at kind of minimizing all this by saying get over it, which by the way now is a t-shirt being sold by the Trump re-election committee. But it is damaging because you still have an admission. He tried to clean it up later. People who give depositions to law enforcement officials get in trouble when they don't think through what they want to say and how they want to say it. So even you can't be flip, you can't be offhand. I think part of the reason he got in trouble in that long briefing is that he did try to be a little too flip and maybe just a little, what are you all bothering me with these questions for, but I'm happy to take it. But clearly an admission is an admission, and I think he will have trouble politically within the Democratic House impeachment and walking it back, but never underestimate the power of the president to communicate and diluting whatever might seem that Mulvaney went wrong. The president's powerful ability to communicate via Twitter may make this a different political